The sun was just beginning to rise over the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of the warehouse district. There, in the parking lot of a local delivery hub, one man's day was about to take a turn that would change everything. Darnell Davis, wearing his faded red uniform, pulled up in his ancient 2004 Honda Civic. The car wheezed its way into a parking spot, its engine protesting every step of the journey. It was a familiar sound, one that Darnell had grown used to over the years. But as the engine sputtered to a halt, something in the air felt different today. A group of workers from the warehouse were standing near the loading dock, laughing and chatting. Darnell tried to ignore them, as he always did. He grabbed the delivery bags from the passenger seat and started to head inside, but that's when the first jab came. "Yo, Darnell," Mark, one of the younger workers, called out. "Didn't know they still made cars like that, man. I thought that thing was a relic from the 90s. Laughter erupted among the others, and Darnell felt the familiar sting of humiliation wash over him. He forced a smile, though it felt like a mask. They didn't understand. They didn't know how much it hurt to still be driving this old car, years into adulthood, while trying to keep his dreams alive. But he had learned over time to swallow the hurt, put on his game face, and keep going. Still, the comment stung more than usual. Mark wasn't just mocking the car. He was mocking Darnell's whole life, his choices, his struggle. For a moment, Darnell stopped, standing tall and taking a deep breath. But then the gut punch came. A voice from behind Mark piped up. "How can you deliver any real value when you're driving a car that can barely make it to the next block? You're just a delivery guy, Darnell. Nothing more." The group laughed again, louder this time. Darnell's jaw tightened, his fists clenched, but he didn't say a word. He just nodded curtly and continued walking, the echo of their laughter following him into the building. But inside, Darnell wasn't just a delivery driver. He wasn't just a man with a car that barely worked. He had a plan. Darnell had spent years grinding away at this job, silently saving every penny he could. Each paycheck, every delivery he made, was a step closer to his dream. The dream wasn't just about owning a better car. It was about owning a car dealership. His own dealership, one where he could provide affordable cars to people who needed them just like he did. He wanted to change lives, and the first step was proving that he could change his own. But the world, it seemed, was not ready to let him go. His co-workers saw him as nothing more than the guy who drove an old car, the guy who'd never amount to anything. But they didn't see what he saw in himself. They didn't see the late nights he spent researching business plans, the weekends he sacrificed for extra work, the hustle that ran deeper than any mockery they could throw his way. As Darnell made his deliveries, he dreamed about the day he would walk into that warehouse with a brand new car. But it wasn't just any car, it would be one that would turn heads. It would be the kind of car that would make Mark and his friends eat their words. Then, one day, just a few months after that painful morning in the parking lot, Darnell got a call that would change everything. He had been working his usual route, making deliveries for a car dealership just outside the city, when his phone buzzed. He looked down at the screen. It was an unknown number, but something about the call felt urgent. "Hello," Darnell said. "Mr. Davis?" The voice on the other end asked, sounding professional. "This is Blake from Brennan Automotive Group. We're reaching out to you because we've noticed your exceptional work ethic in the field. We're in need of someone who's driven, someone who understands the delivery business inside and out. And we think you might be just the person we're looking for." Darnell's heart raced. Was this a joke? "I'm listening," Darnell said, trying to keep his cool. "We want you to come in for an interview," Blake continued. "We're opening up a new position in our dealership's management team, and we think you could be a perfect fit. Plus, we want you to drive one of our new vehicles as part of your role. How soon can you come in?" Darnell's mind raced. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. The opportunity to prove to himself and everyone else that he wasn't just a delivery driver. He could be the face of a business. He could be more than what they saw. "I'll be there in an hour," Darnell said, his voice steady. Let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on your notification bell so that you can be the first to enjoy our amazing stories. Fast forward to a few weeks later. Darnell had accepted the position at Brennan Automotive, and life had already begun to change. The once rotting Civic was now parked in the dealership's garage, replaced by a brand new, sleek black sedan. Darnell had worked hard for this moment, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it from him. The next day, Darnell arrived at work early, ready to make an impression. He walked into the warehouse in his new suit, his crisp new car keys hanging from his belt loop. Mark, who hadn't seen him since that mocking morning months ago, was standing near the loading dock with his usual group of friends. When he saw Darnell, his eyes widened. "What's this? Did you win the lottery, Darnell?" Mark laughed, stepping forward. Darnell's lips curled into a slow smile. "Actually, I did something better," he said, motioning toward the lot behind him. "I'm driving a brand new car dealership vehicle." The entire group froze. Mark's face went pale, his jaw dropping. "Wait, what?" "Yeah," Darnell continued, the confidence in his voice unmistakable now. "I just became the manager of that dealership. The one that used to mock me for my car, it's now mine. Not just the car. The whole damn lot." Darnell could feel the weight of the words sink in as Mark's expression morphed from disbelief to shame. "See," Darnell said with a knowing smile, "you don't always know who someone is just by the car they drive." But as Darnell turned to walk into his new office, there was one question on his mind. What would happen when Mark and the others came to buy a car from him? He knew they would. He knew they had no idea who he truly was, and he wasn't sure he was ready to confront them. Would they apologize? Or would they continue to look down on him? Darnell paused, just before the door closed behind him, looking out at the group. The power had shifted, but one thing was still unclear. Could he forgive them? Or would he make them feel the full weight of their mockery? As he walked into his office, Darnell glanced at the shiny new keys on his desk and made a decision. It was time to turn the page. But in the back of his mind, he knew that the real test was still coming. Would he become the man he had always dreamed of, or would the past continue to haunt him? The answer would come soon. Very soon. Darnell's journey isn't just about a car or a job. It's about proving that no one can define you by your circumstances or your past. The mockery, the doubt, it's all part of the struggle, but it doesn't have to be the end. Persistence and belief in yourself are the most powerful tools you can have. Keep pushing forward, even when the world tells you that you're not enough. Because one day, you'll get the chance to show them just how wrong they were. Darnell's life had changed in ways he never thought possible. The sleek black sedan parked outside the dealership was no longer just a symbol of success. It was the embodiment of everything he had fought for, the result of years of sacrifice, patience, and, above all, persistence. The dealership job wasn't just an opportunity, it was his shot. When he walked into the office that morning, everything felt surreal. Gone were the endless hours driving his old Civic to make deliveries. Gone was the ridicule of his co-workers, the stares, the judgments. Darnell had been hired to manage not just a car lot, but a new chapter in his life. His desk sat by the big windows that overlooked the dealership's pristine lot, filled with shiny new cars waiting to be sold. For the first time in years, Darnell felt something other than the crushing weight of struggle. He felt pride. He knew his work had just begun, but that didn't stop him from standing there for a moment, soaking in the view. But even in this moment of triumph, Darnell couldn't escape the memory of the mocking words from his old co-workers. The words still echoed in his mind. "You're just a delivery guy." He pushed them down for now. Today, he was here to prove that he was more. Still, there was a storm brewing inside him, one that had been growing ever since that humiliating moment in the parking lot when Mark and the others had mocked his car. He had the opportunity to get ahead, to rise above it all. But what would happen when the people from his old life found out? What would happen when they walked into this dealership? The hours passed quickly as Darnell settled into his new routine. He met with his new team, conducted his first sales training, and made plans to expand the dealership's reach in the local community. Everything felt right, as though he was meant to be here. The long hours, the tough days, he was ready for them. But in the back of his mind, he knew it was only a matter of time before Mark and the others from his old job came to find him. They weren't exactly the type to forget someone like Darnell. and even though he had climbed his way out of the hole they had thrown him into, he couldn't help but wonder if there was still unfinished business. That's when it happened. The dealership's first big sales event was only a week away. It was a grand opening, one that Darnell had worked hard to organize, and he knew it was going to be his chance to prove himself to the community. He was ready to put everything he had into making this event a success. But as he stood in the showroom, going over the final details with his team, the door to the dealership opened. Darnell didn't even have to look up to know who it was. Mark walked in, his head held high, followed by a couple of the other workers from the warehouse. They were standing there, grinning like they had won some kind of victory. "Hey, Darnell," Mark called, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like you finally got a real car. What, did the boss finally give you a promotion?" Darnell's blood ran cold. So they had come. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable, but inside, his heart was racing. This wasn't just a sales visit. This was a test. Mark's eyes scanned the room as he walked in, the other workers trailing behind him. Darnell could feel their gaze on him, sizing him up as though they were waiting for him to slip. Mark, of course, didn't miss a beat. "Well, look at you now," Mark continued, chuckling. "I gotta say, Darnell, I didn't think you'd actually make it out of that old junker. Guess we were wrong about you, huh?" Darnell clenched his jaw but didn't respond. Instead, he straightened his tie and addressed them calmly. "What can I help you with, Mark?" Mark smirked. "Well, we're looking for a new car. You know, something reliable, something that doesn't look like it's about to fall apart." The sarcasm in his voice was thick, but Darnell didn't take the bait. "Not today. We've got a great selection here," Darnell said coolly, gesturing to the rows of shiny cars. "Take your pick. I'm sure you'll find something that suits your needs." Mark raised an eyebrow. "I'm sure we will. But, Darnell, before we make any decisions, there's something we need to ask you." Darnell felt his stomach tighten. Here it came. "Do you really think you're the right guy to be running this place?" Mark's voice was low, almost challenging. "I mean, let's be honest. You used to be just a delivery driver. Now you're a big shot? That doesn't exactly inspire confidence, man." Darnell's heart hammered in his chest. The challenge was clear. He could feel the weight of the room on his shoulders. Mark and the others weren't just here to buy a car. They were here to see if Darnell would crumble under the pressure, if he would fold and admit that he wasn't really cut out for this life. He took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs before exhaling slowly. It was time to prove them wrong. "I've worked my entire life for this opportunity, Mark," Darnell said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm here because I earned it. And if you can't see that, then maybe you should look a little harder." Mark's smirk faltered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. He turned to his friends and laughed. "Guess we'll have to think about it, huh?" But Darnell wasn't done. He stepped closer to them, letting the weight of his presence fill the space between them. "You came in here to mock me," he said, his voice growing sharper, more pointed. "But I'm not the same guy who used to drive a beat-up car to work. And today, you're gonna see what happens when someone like me gets a real chance. I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here to prove it to myself." The tension in the room hung thick. Mark's face hardened, and for a brief moment, it felt like everything was on the line. But just as Darnell thought he might finally get the apology, the acknowledgement he deserved, the door to the dealership opened again. This time, it wasn't just a group of mockers. It was something much bigger, and much more unexpected. A higher authority had just walked in, and Darnell had no idea what was coming next. As the figure stepped into the dealership, the room went silent. Darnell turned. His breath caught in his throat. It was the owner of the car dealership. And as he locked eyes with Darnell, a single question loomed heavy in the air. Was Darnell about to get everything he wanted, or would the weight of his past still crush him? The owner smiled, and Darnell couldn't tell if it was a smile of approval, or something far more dangerous. The tension was unbearable. What would happen next? Would Darnell's dreams slip away, or was this the moment he would finally be crowned victorious? Let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on your notification bell so that you can be the first to enjoy our amazing stories. The room fell silent. Every eye in the dealership seemed to turn to the entrance, where the sharp click of polished shoes echoed against the marble floor. Darnell's heart raced, his palms growing clammy as the figure who had just stepped into the dealership walked confidently toward him. He didn't recognize the man at first, but the air in the room told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just another customer. This was someone important. The man wore a sleek navy blue suit that fit perfectly, his tie sharp, and his posture exuded authority. He was tall, with a commanding presence that seemed to fill the entire space. The owner of the dealership. Darnell's throat tightened. This was the moment he'd been dreading and hoping for, all at once. Mark, who had been so quick to taunt Darnell just moments ago, now seemed almost small in comparison to the man who had just entered. There was a shift in the room, a collective sense of unease as the owner's gaze swept over the showroom. And then, his eyes locked on Darnell's. Darnell tried to steady himself, unsure of what to expect next. But before he could make a move, the owner's gaze softened slightly. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips, almost as if he recognized Darnell from somewhere. "Ah, you must be Darnell," the owner said, his voice deep and warm, a stark contrast to the cold, mocking tone Mark had used earlier. "I've heard good things about you." The tension in the room was palpable. Mark and his friends exchanged confused glances, clearly taken aback by the owner's words. Darnell, though, couldn't help but feel a spark of hope ignite in him. Yeah," Darnell replied, forcing himself to maintain eye contact. "I'm Darnell. How can I help you, sir?" The owner smiled. "I've been following the dealership's progress since you came aboard. From what I've seen, you've done a remarkable job here. I wanted to personally congratulate you for your hard work." Darnell was speechless. Had he just heard that right? The owner was congratulating him. This was the validation he had longed for, the recognition he'd been silently craving. It felt almost surreal. Mark, on the other hand, looked completely dumbfounded. His face went red as he quickly tried to mask his discomfort. Mr. Henderson, I didn't know you were, keeping tabs on things here. It's, good to see you." Mark stammered, his confidence from earlier completely evaporating. But the owner wasn't focused on Mark or his uncomfortable attempts at small talk. He had Darnell's full attention now. "Actually, Darnell, I came here to speak with you privately. I'd like to offer you an opportunity. A bigger role than the one you're in now." The words hung in the air like an electric charge. Darnell's breath caught in his throat. This was it. The moment that could change everything. The room seemed to fade away as Darnell tried to process what the owner was saying. A bigger role? After everything he'd been through, after the years of ridicule, the judgment, the insults, he was being offered a chance to step up, to prove once and for all that he was worth more than the old car they had once mocked him for driving. The owner continued, his voice calm but authoritative. "We're expanding our operations, and I've been looking for someone with real heart, someone who can handle the pressure and take this business to the next level. I think you've shown that you have what it takes." Mark's face was a mixture of disbelief and fury now. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. He had been here first. He had been the one everyone expected to take over this role. And yet, it was Darnell, the same guy they had laughed at, who was being offered the job. Darnell could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His mind raced. This was everything he had dreamed of, everything he had worked for. But the mocking voices, the hurtful words, the doubt he had carried for years, it all flooded back. He had endured so much to get here. But was he ready? Did he truly believe he deserved this chance? Or was this just a fleeting moment, a lucky break? The owner was watching him intently, waiting for a response. I don't know what to say," Darnell finally managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined something like this would happen." "You don't have to say anything right now," the owner replied, nodding. "Take some time to think it over. But know that this opportunity is real. and it's yours if you want it." With that, the owner turned to Mark and the others, offering them a brief nod before walking toward the exit, leaving Darnell alone in the showroom with his thoughts. As the door closed behind him, the silence was almost deafening. Mark stood there, completely still, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Just remember, Darnell," Mark's voice cut through the tension. "You might have the owner's attention now, but that doesn't mean we'll forget who you really are. You're still just a delivery guy, no matter what car you drive." Darnell's heart skipped a beat. Mark's words stung, but they didn't hold the same weight they once did. He had a chance now, a real chance to prove everyone wrong. But even as Darnell stood there, contemplating what he had just been offered, a nagging feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. What if this wasn't just about the car dealership? What if there was more at play here? What if there were forces at work, things he couldn't see, pulling the strings in ways he couldn't understand? And what if Mark wasn't done yet? Just as Darnell was about to let his thoughts settle, a familiar figure appeared at the door of the dealership once again. This time, it wasn't Mark. It wasn't the owner. It was someone from Darnell's past. Someone who had always been there, watching from the shadows, and their presence made everything feel uncertain once more. The question in the air now wasn't just whether Darnell would take the job. It was, how far would they go to keep him from taking it? Who was this person, and what did they want? The answer could change everything. Darnell stood there, frozen in disbelief, staring at his father, Marcus, who was standing in front of him like a ghost from the past. The words had barely sunk in when the weight of the moment hit him. Marcus, the man who had abandoned him, who had left him to fight for survival all these years, was asking for a second chance. He wanted to be a part of Darnell's life. Why now? Darnell's voice cracked as he stared at his father, his heart pounding. After everything, after all this time, why are you suddenly here? Why do you care now? Marcus sighed deeply, his hands wringing nervously at his sides. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything," he began, his voice low. "But I've been watching you, Darnell. I've seen how hard you've worked, how far you've come. You've done everything on your own, and I've been ashamed that I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm here now. I'm here to help you. Let me make it right." The air between them thickened, the past and present colliding in a way that felt suffocating. Darnell wanted to feel anger, to tell Marcus to leave, to remind him of every moment he'd spent feeling abandoned and alone. But there was something in his father's voice, something raw and vulnerable, that made it impossible for Darnell to push him away completely. "Help me. After everything you've done, what could you possibly help me with?" Darnell's words were harsh, but his mind was clouded with confusion and pain. He didn't know what to think anymore. "I don't know what I can do," Marcus admitted, his voice faltering. "But I want to try. I want to show you that I'm not the same man I was. I want to help you with your future, Darnell. I know I don't deserve it, but if you'll just give me a chance." Darnell shook his head, his mind swirling. Could he really let this man back into his life? Was this just another empty promise, another lie to add to the pile? Or was it possible that his father truly wanted redemption? Before he could respond, the dealership door swung open with a heavy creak. Darnell turned, startled, to see the owner of the dealership, Mr. Harris, entering the showroom, holding something in his hand. His eyes immediately went to Darnell. "Darnell, can I speak with you for a moment?" Mr. Harris's voice was calm, but there was something about his demeanor that made Darnell's pulse quicken. What was going on? "Of course, Mr. Harris," Darnell said, still reeling from the conversation with his father. He glanced briefly at Marcus, who stood with a resigned look on his face, before walking toward the owner. "Something's come up," Mr. Harris began, his eyes scanning the room, his voice lowering. "I have something for you. I wasn't planning on sharing this until later, but I think you need to know about it now." Darnell's stomach tightened. "Something for him?" Mr. Harris handed Darnell an envelope, thick, official-looking, and sealed. As Darnell's fingers brushed against the paper, a feeling of dread settled in the pit of his stomach. He had no idea what this letter could contain, but whatever it was important. Darnell tore open the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. His eyes skimmed the contents quickly, but as the words hit him, his entire body went still. The letter was from the bank, the one that held the financing for the dealership. The letter spoke of a critical decision and stated that, due to unforeseen circumstances, the dealership was facing a severe financial crunch. But that wasn't what took his breath away. The letter also included a shocking revelation. The dealership was being sold, and the new owners were looking to restructure, which could mean job cuts and reassignments. The letter mentioned that Darnell's role was at risk, and it implied that he might not even have a place in the new structure of the business. Darnell's heart dropped into his stomach. His job was in jeopardy. The future he had worked so hard for was hanging by a thread. He looked up at Mr. Harris, who had been watching him closely. The weight of the situation seemed to hit the air like a punch. What does this mean? Darnell's voice was shaky as he tried to process what he had just read. How can this be happening? Mr. Harris looked almost as stunned as Darnell. I don't have all the details yet, he said, but the bank is moving fast, and they want to make decisions soon. I'm doing everything I can to keep this from affecting you, Darnell, but I need you to understand that this could be out of my hands. We may have to let some people go. Darnell felt the blood drain from his face. He was facing losing everything. The car, the dealership, the respect he had earned. All of it could vanish in the blink of an eye. And as he stood there, in the middle of the showroom, surrounded by the echoes of his own ambitions, a thought flashed through his mind. Was this the universe's way of testing him? Before Darnell could respond, he heard a faint cough from behind him. He turned around, and there stood Marcus, his face unreadable. I know this is a lot to process, son, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a weight Darnell hadn't expected. But if you'll let me, I can help you. I have connections. People who could help us save this dealership. Maybe even help you keep your job. Darnell's mind was reeling. Help him. Was this really the moment when his father, the man who had walked away, would step in and save him? Could he trust Marcus, or was this just another empty promise? Darnell didn't know. He didn't know who to trust, what to believe. The letter in his hand felt like a ticking bomb, and with every second that passed, it seemed like more of his dreams were slipping away. The question now was no longer just about whether he could trust his father. It was about whether he had the power to fight back against the forces working against him. Could he really save the dealership and his future before it was too late? As Darnell stood there, holding the letter, his father's words hanging in the air, the showroom door opened once again. This time, it wasn't just a visitor. It was someone from the bank. The person entered with a cold, businesslike expression, and in their hand, they held another envelope, a final decision that could change everything. Darnell felt his pulse quicken. Was this the moment he would lose everything? Or would someone step in and change his fate forever? The clock was ticking, and Darnell had no idea how much time he had left. Darnell's mind raced as the person from the bank stepped into the showroom, holding the thick envelope. His palms were clammy, and his heart pounded in his chest. The words from Mr. Harris echoed in his mind. The dealership was in jeopardy. He was in jeopardy. Everything he had fought for, every ounce of effort he had poured into proving himself, seemed on the verge of slipping through his fingers. The person from the bank walked toward Darnell with slow, deliberate steps. The air felt thick with tension, like a storm was rolling in. Darnell's eyes flicked from the envelope to Mr. Harris, who was standing quietly beside him. The look in Mr. Harris's eyes wasn't one of optimism, but a kind of helpless acceptance. The figure from the bank finally reached Darnell and handed him the envelope, his expression unreadable. It was the kind of face that made you feel like your future was entirely in their hands. Darnell's fingers brushed the surface of the envelope, almost hesitating before tearing it open. His mind was spinning. Was this the end? As Darnell unfolded the letter, the weight of the words seemed to press down on him like a ton of bricks. The letter outlined several points about the dealership's financial situation. It confirmed what Darnell had feared. The dealership was on the brink of bankruptcy. But it also contained something even more devastating. The bank wasn't just offering a restructure or a deal. They had made the decision to liquidate the dealership. The building, the cars, the inventory, they were all going up for sale. And worse still, Darnell's job, everything he had worked for, was now part of that liquidation. Darnell felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Everything was over. The old car he used to drive, the mocking comments, the long days behind the wheel. Those had been hard, yes, but this was worse. This wasn't just about his car anymore. This was about his life, his future, his dignity. He lifted his eyes from the letter, feeling the cold sweat forming at his brow. He glanced at Marcus, who stood there silently, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and helplessness. For the first time, Darnell saw the man for what he truly was, a person who had failed him, yet someone who was now willing to fight for him. But it was too little, too late, wasn't it? What happens now? Darnell asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The bank representative didn't sugarcoat the situation. The process is already in motion. The dealership will be sold to the highest bidder in the next few weeks. I'd recommend making any necessary arrangements, as your position here will likely be eliminated as part of the sale. A chill ran through Darnell, a sensation he couldn't shake. His throat tightened, and he suddenly felt like he couldn't breathe. How had it all come to this? Was this the end of everything he had worked for? Was this the moment when his life would change forever, but not in the way he had dreamed? It felt like the walls were closing in on him, suffocating him, as his mind raced in a dozen directions at once. He had worked so hard to build a name for himself. He had endured ridicule, belittlement, and endless doubt from the people around him. And now, he was going to lose it all. "I'm sorry, Darnell," Mr. Harris said, his voice heavy with regret. "I tried to do everything I could. I really did." Darnell's stomach twisted, the bitterness welling up inside him. Everything he had fought for, everything he had given. Was it really for nothing? Was this all that awaited him at the end of his journey? He thought about the delivery truck, the old car, the long hours spent scrimping and saving, trying to build something from nothing. Was it all just a waste? But before Darnell could respond, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up and saw Marcus, his father, standing beside him, looking at him with a determination that Darnell hadn't seen in years. "Son, you're not in this alone," Marcus said quietly. "You don't have to fight this battle by yourself." Darnell opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. He had no words. How could he accept help from the man who had abandoned him? How could he trust him now? And yet, something in Marcus's eyes told him this wasn't just about guilt or obligation. This was about the possibility of redemption. Marcus was offering him a lifeline. "I know I can't make up for everything I've done," Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion, "but I've built connections over the years. I know people who could help us save this place. Let me help you, Darnell. Let me prove to you that I'm not the same man who walked out on you all those years ago." Darnell's chest tightened. He didn't know what to believe anymore. Was this his chance to rebuild, to save everything he had worked for? Or was it another lie wrapped in empty promises? As he turned the letter over in his hands, something caught his eye, an additional note scribbled in the margins of the letter. It was from the bank representative, someone who clearly knew about Darnell's situation and had some knowledge of his relationship with Marcus. The note read, "If you act quickly, there might still be a way to prevent the liquidation. But the window is closing fast." A small flicker of hope ignited within Darnell, but it was quickly followed by an overwhelming wave of doubt. What did that mean? Was there still time to turn things around, or was he just grasping at straws? Before he could ask any more questions, a loud bang from the back of the dealership interrupted the tense silence. It was followed by shouting, and Darnell's heart skipped a beat. The sound of angry voices echoed through the showroom, and it didn't take long for him to realize what was happening. There was another buyer, one who had come to make an offer that could change everything, and they were here to take control. Darnell's mind raced. Was it too late? Was the dealership already gone? Was he about to lose everything? He turned toward Marcus, but the words wouldn't come. They were both stuck in that moment of uncertainty, not knowing what the future would hold. As Darnell stepped toward the back of the showroom, he caught a glimpse of the new buyer, their face a mask of cold determination. And as they looked up, Darnell's world froze. It was someone he had never expected to see again. Someone who held the key to everything Darnell had worked for. But would they help him? Or destroy everything? The tension was palpable. Darnell was running out of time, and the next few moments would determine his fate forever. Darnell felt his heart racing as he stood frozen in the doorway of the back room, staring at the buyer. The voice that had been shouting in anger now softened into an unsettling silence. Every muscle in Darnell's body tensed as he stared into the cold, calculating eyes of the person standing before him. It was as though time itself had come to a halt. He blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. The person before him wasn't just another random buyer from the bank. No, this was someone he knew. Charles Holloway. Charles wasn't just any buyer. He was the very man who had mocked Darnell for driving that old delivery truck years ago. The man who, just months before, had scoffed at Darnell's struggle, calling him a nobody who would never amount to anything. Darnell remembered the smirk on Charles's face as he mocked his old car, dismissed him as a joke. But now, Charles was here, standing in front of him, about to take control of everything Darnell had built. Darnell's stomach churned. Charles. Of all people. Marcus stood behind Darnell, his face drawn with concern. "I didn't know he was coming," he whispered. "This is bad, Darnell. If he's here, we're in trouble." The weight of the situation was suffocating. Darnell couldn't help but replay the harsh words Charles had said to him just months ago, mocking his car, his life, his every move. Now, he was here to buy the dealership, take everything away from Darnell. Charles's eyes locked onto Darnell with a glint of recognition. He smirked as he took a step forward, folding his arms across his chest. "Well, well, well," Charles said, his voice oozing with arrogance. "Look who we have here. The old delivery driver. Didn't think you'd still be around." Darnell's jaw clenched, the anger rising like a fire in his chest. He could feel the heat of the past months, the ridicule, the struggle, the rejection, come crashing down on him. It was all too much. It was too unfair. And Charles was standing there, mocking him again, as if he hadn't already won. He forced himself to take a deep breath, trying to steady the rising storm inside of him. He couldn't let Charles see him break. Not now. Not after everything he'd been through. "What do you want, Charles?" Darnell's voice was steady, though his hands balled into fists at his sides. He wasn't about to show weakness. Not now. Not after everything he had fought for. Charles laughed, the sound harsh and dismissive. "What do I want? You know what I want, Darnell. This dealership. The land. Everything you've worked for." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I'm here to take it all." Let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on your notification bell so that you can be the first to enjoy our amazing stories. Marcus stepped forward, his voice trembling with urgency. "You can't do this. This dealership has been in the family for years. You think you can just waltz in here and take it from us?" Charles gave a dismissive wave, not even bothering to look at Marcus. "It's not about what's fair. It's about money, my friend. And in case you haven't noticed, you're out of time. The bank's already made their decision. I'm the one who holds the cards now." Darnell's heart sank. This was really happening. Everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed, was slipping through his fingers. The dream of owning a dealership, of making something of himself, it was all over. But as Darnell stood there, watching Charles walk around the showroom with that smug look on his face, something inside him snapped. The years of ridicule, the countless hours spent proving his worth, the constant fight for respect, it all came rushing back. He wasn't going to let Charles win. He wasn't going to let anyone take away his future. Darnell turned to Marcus, his mind already racing. "We can't just sit here and let him take everything. There has to be a way to stop this." Marcus nodded, but there was a grim look on his face. I've tried everything I can. The bank has already made its move. If we don't act fast, this place is gone. Darnell felt his hands tremble, but he refused to show any sign of weakness. He had to act. This was his moment. He wasn't about to let Charles Holloway, or anyone else, take what was rightfully his. As the tension thickened in the room, Charles made a move toward the desk where all the dealership's paperwork was laid out. "You know, Darnell," he said casually, not even bothering to look back at him, "you really should have just accepted it. There's no point in fighting anymore. You don't have the resources, you don't have the backing. It's over." Darnell's mind was working at lightning speed. He knew one thing for certain. He had to make a move. There had to be something, some way to turn the tables. He thought back to the connections Marcus had spoken of, to the people who could help them. Was this the moment he had been waiting for? And then it hit him. The deal was not final. The paperwork wasn't done yet. The bank's letter had been clear. There was a window, a small window of opportunity to challenge the sale and save the dealership. Darnell's heart pounded. He had one shot, one chance to turn everything around. He couldn't let it slip away. He turned to Marcus, his eyes burning with determination. "We need to act fast," he said. "There's still time to stop this. We have to find a way to block the sale. We need legal help. We need someone who can move fast. There's a loophole, and I'm going to use it." Marcus's face lit up with a flicker of hope. "But who can we trust? How do we even begin?" As Darnell looked back at Charles, who was now looking at them both with an amused expression, he realized just how high the stakes were. The dealership, his future, everything he had worked for. But just as he was about to make the call, there was a sudden knock on the showroom door. Everyone turned in surprise. A new person had entered the scene. Darnell's stomach twisted. The person at the door was holding a document, the most important document of his life. And from the look on their face, this was the moment that would change everything. The stranger stepped forward, their face hidden behind the document. As they handed it to Darnell, they said two words that made his blood run cold. "You're too late." Darnell's heart stopped. Was it over? Had he missed his chance? Or was this the moment that would change his fate forever? Everything hinged on those words. What happened next would decide whether Darnell would rise from the ashes or fall into obscurity. The world seemed to slow down as Darnell stood frozen in place, staring at the person holding the document. The words, "You're too late," echoed in his mind like a relentless drumbeat, drowning out everything else around him. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Had he really missed his chance? Was the dealership really about to slip through his fingers for good? Marcus and Charles both stood at opposite ends of the room, watching Darnell. Charles, ever the opportunist, had a smug look on his face, as if he already knew the outcome. Marcus, on the other hand, looked anxious, his hands clenched into fists, willing Darnell to take the next step. The stranger stepped closer, and Darnell finally gathered the courage to speak. "Who are you?" His voice was steady, but the nerves in his gut were making his words feel shaky. The stranger lowered the document just enough to reveal a familiar face, a face Darnell hadn't expected to see. It was Maya, the lawyer he had met years ago when he first tried to get financing for his own car dealership. She was one of the few people who had believed in him from the beginning, and the one person who had made sure he had the legal advice to even attempt something as bold as opening a dealership. She had worked tirelessly for him, even though the odds had always seemed stacked against him. "You're not too late," Maya said, her voice firm and reassuring. "In fact, you're right on time." Darnell blinked, trying to comprehend the shift in the atmosphere. The document Maya handed him was filled with legal jargon, but there was one clear statement at the top. The liquidation was under review due to discrepancies in the paperwork filed by the bank. Darnell's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The bank had made a critical mistake when they initiated the liquidation. Maya had uncovered the error. There was still a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. "I had a feeling they were rushing this process, so I took a closer look at their filings," Maya explained, her tone calm but filled with urgency. "There's a clause in the contract that they missed. one that allows you to challenge the liquidation if it's initiated improperly. You have the legal grounds to stop this, Darnell. He could hardly believe it. All this time, all this struggle, he still had a chance to fight. Marcus, who had been watching the exchange in stunned silence, suddenly exhaled in relief. Wait, you're telling me there's hope? His voice cracked, his years of frustration coming to the surface. We can still keep this place? Darnell looked from Maya to Marcus and then to Charles, who now wore a look of growing concern. It was clear that Charles had underestimated Darnell. He thought he could just swoop in and claim the dealership, but Darnell had more fight in him than Charles could ever anticipate. Yes, there's hope, Maya affirmed. But we need to act fast. The bank has already started making moves to finalize the sale, but with this legal challenge, we can halt everything until we get a proper review. The room was thick with tension as Darnell's mind raced. This wasn't just about saving a business, it was about more than that. This was about proving to himself and the world that he wasn't just some delivery driver in an old truck. He was a man with vision, with resilience, with the power to overcome anything life threw at him. Charles, clearly sensing his hold on the situation slipping, stepped forward. "This isn't over yet, Darnell," he sneered, trying to regain control. "You can't just push this through. You think the bank is going to listen to some loophole?" Darnell looked at him, his eyes unwavering. "It's not a loophole, Charles," he said, his voice steady. "It's justice. And sometimes, justice finds its way, even when people like you think they can buy their way out of it." The words were sharp, and Charles flinched, his face tightening with anger. Darnell knew he was pushing every button, but it didn't matter. This was bigger than Charles. This was about the future he had fought for. Darnell turned to Maya. "What's the next step?" "We file the challenge," Maya said. "But we need to move quickly. Once the court reviews the evidence, they'll make a decision. Could take days, maybe even weeks. But for now, it means the sale is frozen, and you get the time you need to prepare." Darnell nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment. His moment. Days passed in a blur of paperwork, meetings, and tense negotiations. The dealership was temporarily safe, but there was no guarantee what would happen in the end. The challenge had put everything on hold, but the real battle was just beginning. And Darnell knew that whatever the outcome, he wasn't going to stop. The moment he had feared had become a distant memory, and now, standing at the front of the dealership, Darnell looked out over the rows of cars, the cars he had worked so hard to put on the lot. The same lot where he had been laughed at for his old truck, where he had been told he would never make it. He wasn't just fighting for the dealership anymore. He was fighting for himself. Marcus stood beside him, the weight of the past hanging heavy between them, but there was a new understanding in their eyes. "You've come a long way, Darnell," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe I ever doubted you." Darnell's eyes met his, a quiet strength in his gaze. "I don't need you to believe in me, Marcus. I just need you to stand beside me when it matters." And then, Darnell turned toward the dealership, his back straight and his heart full. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: he was going to fight for it. Sometimes, life will throw everything it has at you: doubt, ridicule, rejection, and it will make you question everything you've ever believed in. But in those moments, the most powerful thing you can do is to hold on to your belief in yourself. Keep pushing forward, even when the odds seem impossible, because, in the end, the one person who can change your fate is you. Darnell's journey wasn't just about the dealership. It was about the strength to face down every obstacle, every moment of doubt, and every person who tried to tell him he wasn't enough. It was about the power of believing in your dreams, even when no one else does. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest victory of all. Let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on your notification bell so that you can be the first to enjoy our amazing stories.